6323. If a second-class medical certificate was to a commercial pilot 13 months ago, during the next 11 months this pilot may A. Not act as pilot in command or carry passengers or property. B. Act as pilot in command and carry passengers or property, but not for compensation or hire. C. Act as pilot in command for compensation or hire, but may not carry passengers or property for compensation or hire. The correct answer is B. If a commercial pilot received a second-class medical certificate 13 months ago, during the next 11 months, this pilot may act as pilot in command and carry passengers or property, but not for compensation or hire. Second-class medical certificate is typically issued to pilots who are engaged in commercial aviation activities. It signifies that the pilot meets the medical standards required for operating aircraft in commercial operations. However, it is important to note that a second-class medical certificate is valid for a duration of 12 months from the date of issuance. In this scenario, since the pilot's second-class medical certificate was issued 13 months ago, it has expired. As a result, the pilot is no longer eligible to act as pilot in command or carry passengers or property for compensation or hire during the next 11 months. However, the pilot is still allowed to act as pilot in command and carry passengers or property during the next 11 months, but only in non-commercial operations. This means that the pilot can engage in recreational flying, personal transportation, or other non-commercial activities. Compensation or hire is not allowed in these operations. It is important for pilots to maintain valid and current medical certificates to ensure compliance with aviation regulations and to ensure the safety of themselves, passengers, and property. Pilots should always be aware of their medical certificate expiration dates and seek timely renewal to continue operating in commercial aviation or any other applicable operations. 6324. A third-class medical certificate was on May 3rd to a person over 40 years of age. TO exercised the privileges of a private pilot certificate. The medical certificate will be valid through A. May 3rd, 24 months later. B. May 31st, 24 months later. C. May 31st, 36 months later. The correct answer is B. In this scenario, a third-class medical certificate was issued on May 3rd to a person over 40 years of age. To exercise the privileges of a private pilot certificate, the medical certificate will be valid through May 31st, 24 months later. Option B is the correct answer. When it comes to medical certification for pilots, there are different classes of medical certificates, namely first class, second class, and third class. The class of medical certificate required depends on the type of pilot certificate and the nature of the flying activity. In this case, the individual holds a third-class medical certificate, which is typically associated with private pilot operations. The validity of a third-class medical certificate for a person over 40 years of age is 24 months from the date of issuance. According to the scenario, the third-class medical certificate was issued on May 3rd. Therefore, the medical certificate will be valid for 24 months from that date. As a result, the medical certificate will remain valid until May 31st, 24 months later. This means that the pilot can exercise the privileges of a private pilot certificate during this period. It is important for pilots to be aware of the expiration date of their medical certificates and seek timely renewal to continue exercising the privileges of their pilot certificates. Compliance with medical certification requirements is crucial for ensuring the safety of flight operations and regulatory compliance. 7312. Can a 43-year-old student pilot fly solo with a first-class certificate that was 15 months ago? A. No. First-class medical certificates are not issued to student pilots. B. No. Student pilots must hold a third-class certificate. C. Yes. The pilot may exercise student pilot privileges. The correct answer is C. Typically, student pilots are required to hold a third-class medical certificate, which is the minimum requirement for medical certification to exercise the privileges of a student pilot. However, there are exceptions to this rule, and a student pilot may hold a higher class medical certificate, such as a first-class medical certificate, which is usually associated with higher levels of certification. In this case, the 43-year-old student pilot possesses a first-class medical certificate that was issued 15 months ago. Although first-class medical certificates are not commonly issued to student pilots, the fact that the student pilot already holds a first-class medical certificate allows them to exercise the privileges of a student pilot. It's important to note that medical certificates have validity periods, and it is the responsibility of the pilot to maintain a current and valid medical certificate to ensure compliance with regulatory requirements. The specific duration of validity for each class of medical certificate may vary depending on factors such as the pilot's age and the regulations of the Aviation Authority. In this scenario, since the first-class medical certificate was issued 15 months ago, it is crucial for the student pilot to check the expiration date and ensure that the medical certificate remains valid. If the medical certificate has expired or is approaching expiration, the student pilot should seek timely renewal to continue exercising the privileges of a student pilot. While the student pilot may fly solo with the first-class medical certificate, it is important to clarify that the student pilot privileges are limited to solo flight and do not include carrying passengers or engaging in commercial operations. The student pilot should always operate within the limitations and privileges specified for student pilots and comply with all applicable regulations and requirements. It's worth mentioning that specific regulations and requirements regarding medical certification and student pilot privileges may vary between different countries or aviation authorities. Therefore, it is important for pilots to consult the most up-to-date regulations and guidance provided by their local aviation authority for accurate and detailed information regarding medical certification and student pilot privileges. Q6325. A second-class medical certificate issued January 18th of this year will expire. A. January 18th of next year for private pilot privileges. B. January 31st of next year for commercial pilot privileges. C. January 31st, 2 years later for commercial pilot privileges. The correct answer is B. In this scenario, a second-class medical certificate was issued on January 18th of the current year. The question asks when this medical certificate will expire. The correct answer is January 31st of next year for commercial pilot privileges. A second-class medical certificate is typically required for pilots who are engaged in commercial aviation activities. The expiration date of a second-class medical certificate depends on the type of pilot privileges and the regulations set forth by the Aviation Authority. According to the scenario, since the second-class medical certificate was issued on January 18th of the current year, it will be valid for a period of 12 months from the date of issuance. Therefore, the medical certificate will remain valid until January 31st of next year. Option B correctly states that the second-class medical certificate will expire on January 31st of next year for commercial pilot privileges. This means that the pilot can exercise the privileges of a commercial pilot until the expiration date of the medical certificate. It's important to note that the expiration dates and privileges associated with medical certificates may vary based on the regulations of different aviation authorities and the specific circumstances of the pilot. Pilots should always stay updated on the applicable regulations and ensure timely renewal of their medical certificates to comply with regulatory requirements and maintain the ability to exercise their pilot privileges. Additionally, it's worth mentioning that medical certificates may have different validity periods for different classes of certificates and different age categories of pilots. It's crucial for pilots to be familiar with the specific regulations and requirements regarding medical certification applicable to their situation. 6325-1. To act as PIC while exercising flight instructor privileges with a student pilot, you must maintain at minimum A. A first-class medical certificate. B. A second-class medical certificate. C. BasicMed compliance. The correct answer is C. To act as PIC while exercising flight instructor privileges with a student pilot, you must maintain at minimum BasicMed compliance. BasicMed is an alternative medical certification option introduced by the FAA in the United States. It allows certain pilots to fly without holding a traditional FAA medical certificate. Instead, pilots must meet specific eligibility criteria and comply with the BasicMed requirements. To qualify for BasicMed, pilots must hold a valid U.S. driver's license, have held a medical certificate issued by the FAA at any point after July 14, 2006, even if it is no longer valid or has been suspended or revoked, not have had their most recent medical application denied, or their most recent medical certificate revoked or suspended. Complete a comprehensive medical examination with a state-licensed physician at least once every 4 years. Complete an online medical education course accepted by the FAA at least once every 2 years. By meeting these criteria and maintaining BasicMed compliance, flight instructors can act as PIC while providing instruction to student pilots. It's important to note that BasicMed compliance is specific to flight instruction activities involving student pilots and may not apply to other types of pilot operations. It's always advisable to consult the most up-to-date regulations and guidance provided by the FAA or the relevant aviation authority to ensure compliance with the specific medical certification requirements for flight instruction with student pilots.